And you'll be happy to know a company like Western Coalfields Limited, it was considered a laggard by all benchmarks. Western Coalfield, which used to make losses until very recently, turned a profit last year for the first time after many years. And since the last 6 months, they have been opening one new mine every month. And with a plan to open 24 mines in 24 months starting from March 2015. 24 new mines. That is the level of commitment. And I would urge some of you to move out of the confines of these air-conditioned conferences and actually pay a visit to some of these mines and see the huge changes in the mindset, in the culture of working. See how we are working on controlling power theft. See the technological solution we brought in, where we've literally created an electronic mesh around the mine working areas to make sure that every truck, every movement of coal is on our computer screens with GPRS-enabled trucks moving the coal. So even if a truck deviates by 10 meters out of our boundaries, it immediately raises an alarm in our computer center, in our control room. So all in all, there's a huge effort on a variety of fronts. So it's a holistic effort. It's not just an effort to increase production. It's an effort to increase production effectively, efficiently. Incidentally, the coal secretary could not be with you today because he's in Ranchi on my instructions to draw up rapid plans to set up washeries on a massive scale all over the coal mine areas. In the next 3 years, we plan to wash every piece of coal which is under grade G10, lower than grade G10, which means we are planning to wash about 250 million tons of coal. In the next 3 years, that will be the amount of washeries that will come up. So if any of you is in the washery equipment manufacturing business, you can perk up your plans going forward. And that's the scale at which this government plans, whatever we plan. Be it in terms of our technology solutions. In fact, I have a team which is now working. It's a small thing. It may sound to you to be a very, very small thing. But we are working on a system which I had seen some 2 years ago at Cisco, just before the elections of 2014. I'd been invited to Cisco to see some of their telemedicine solutions. And there they introduced me to their video conferencing system, which was absolutely brilliant. I mean, I'm trying to see if I can get all the 35 PSUs, all the coal mines, offices of the various companies, the 45 NTPC plants. Can we get all of them technology enabled and cut down the maybe 20, 30 crores of airline travel and the hundreds and thousands and millions of man hours we lose on traveling all over the place, only in communicating with each other. And these are small interventions, it may seem, but they all add to the efficiency. Otherwise, as minister, at the drop of a hat, I say call all the MDs of all the coal companies. And they are trudging in from Ranchi and Dhanbad and Kolkata and Nagpur and wherever else. Sometimes we need to do it. Sometimes there's a urgent pressing need. We are looking at serious stuff. We are looking at serious reviews. But we are also now looking at what technology can do. It may sound very small, sir. But all of these small things will add up to the big picture. So apart from that, you said 90 million tons in the other mines. Incidentally, we've given out 70 mines in the current lot. Those 70 mines will all start coming into operation. They themselves, by 2020, have the ability to give some 250 to 300 million tons. So somehow this 90 million ton figure doesn't gel with me. It was probably 60 million last year and will rapidly increase with the opening up of these new mines. And you are well aware that the days of environmental clearance problems and all of those are over. Fortunately, in the coal mining areas, even land acquisition is not a very serious problem. More often than not, the landowners come and plead with us that please take our land. There may be exceptions to that, but by and large, these are barren lands, not fertile, not growing anything significant. So with the government's effort to bring Coal Mining, Coal Bearing Areas Act and Electricity Act under the land acquisition bill, so that land acquired under these two acts also get benefit, like the 9 or 11 acts that we are adding, also get the benefit of higher compensation. Unfortunately, some parties are stalling our effort to give that benefit of higher compensation to the farmers or the land losers. But that's unfortunate. I'm hopeful that they will see sense in what we are trying to do and hopefully allow us to give that higher compensation to the land losers. And then you're also missed the addition of the production of the Singrauli, what's that company? Singareni. We've missed out that that produces coal. You missed out that NTPC has now got some 5 or 6 mines and are fast ramping up plans to open up these mines going forward. SAIL has received some mines. NALCO has received a couple of mines, Utkal B and D or some A and B or something, I don't know. So effectively there's so much more that remains to be added in your calculations. So I repeat, I as in the government of India, is confident that India will produce 1.5 billion tons of coal by 2020, 1 billion of that coming from Coal India. I mean, unfortunately, I'm conflicted, because I would have put every rupee and penny that I have into Coal India stock. But anyway, I just thought I'll reflect that I'm very confident that that will happen. Commercial mining is something we have the enabling provisions. At an appropriate time, when we feel that the time is appropriate, we should start with some commercial mining. It may possibly begin with some of the states doing commercial mining to meet the needs of small consumers, households, and things like that, and then gradually move to the next phase. In terms of technology, sir, we are using all the international best practices when we are reviewing each of these mines and when we are seeing what is the most suitable technology as we open up new mines. In fact, the entire discussions in the United States in the Indo-US energy dialogue was centered around technology and innovation. The entire discussion. The PACE-D program, the PACE-R program, followed by the PACE-D. So whatever research is going on, we'll follow it up with applied and development activities. And the entire effort is that coal mining also be made efficient in the days to come. So we are looking at better grades of coal coming in, and I'm happy to share with you, and I think through the media present here to the people of India, that over the years, there's been a lot of complaints that the coal mines, the declared grade in the coal mines, and the grade that is received by the power plants, there was always some sort of a mismatch, some sort of disconnect between the two. The new government had started the process of third-party sampling, which was a great success, after which almost in the last 9 to 12 months, 9 months, I have received no complaint from any state or power plant about the coal grades. If at all there were any, there's a third-party sampling report, followed by a referee sample report, and the billing has been corrected. So that thing has become an issue of the past. But now I'm doing a further effort. I've asked the coal controller to reassess the grades of all the mines and declare them, taking into account also these third-party sample reports. Over a period of time, sometimes the coal mines, coal quality deteriorates as you go deeper down. These mines were assessed maybe a few years ago, and after that there may have been lower seams that the coal mining is taking place in. So I think in the next 4 to 6 months, the entire mines on an ABC analysis, the bigger ones first, would have been reassessed for more accurate grades of coal, and that will reduce a lot of the friction that we have in the entire system as it exists today. Well, the coordination initially has to be personalized, Vikram. It's a lot of personal engagement and personal willpower and cooperation between everybody that has gone into it. But I assure you that everything we do is through a policy framework There's never a decision taken for a particular case. In fact, that has been my style from the day I became a minister. In my 16 months, I have not signed a single file relating to a single case, particular case. It has always been institutional framework has been brought in. So should Mr. Razdan flag off a problem, it will always be looked at from a root cause analysis, and we'll address it by a policy framework, not by a resolution of his problem. The cost of coal, is it 3 or higher, you mentioned, and the evacuation issues. Very soon we are coming out with a framework where we are going to completely liberalize the ability of companies to use coal in the most cost-effective manner. So all coal linkages, if you recollect when I did the coal auctions, we had allowed pretty liberal swapping of coal produced from that for similar use. So power plants could use that coal in some other plant based on proper approvals for the rail linkages or the movement of coal. Similarly, with the success of that experiment and the experiment that NTPC and Gujarat Gencos did, where we swapped coal between NTPC Korba and the Gujarat Gencos, it almost resulted in a saving of 300-400 crores, if I remember correctly. But with that, on the back of that success, we are looking at liberalizing the coal linkages so that intra-company, for example, NTPC may have linkages for 45 plants. They can swap it, intersay those plants in the most cost-effective manner and bring down the cost of power. Similarly, private people, intra-company could do the same. States and public sector companies or states and private sector companies also will be permitted to exchange coal and settle the difference, if any, in the GCV or anything by way of a payment. But that benefit will then help the nation to bring down the power cost. And my own sense is the two steps, the correction of the grade of coal and the permission or ability to swap coal or exchange coal within plants, within the same company or even between companies, based on guidelines which we'll shortly be notifying after approval, will help the nation save at least 20,000 crores in power bills. I've talked about carbon emission and climate change at the beginning. But broadly, I would like to conclude the coal story by saying that we are very conscious that coal will be the mainstay, but we are also very conscious that we have to use it efficiently. We have permitted old plants to be replaced by modern supercritical plants. All 25, 30-year-old plants, I would personally love to see them phase out in the next decade or 15 years. And by 2030, India should be a country of largely modern and efficient coal-based plants. Hopefully in the next year or two, we'll even make it mandatory to have only supercritical and reasonably well-sized coal-based plants, rather than having too many plants all over the place, which may not necessarily be most efficient in coal consumption and pollution control. Coming to renewables, I fully understand that the grid has to be strengthened, and we've already given out contracts worth 38,000 crores to create green corridors. We have also asked states to identify newer corridors that may be required for larger evacuation of green power. Somebody mentioned about better usage of the you mentioned about the coal cess being used better. Largely the coal cess is being used increasingly for more and more transmission ability of green energy. We are gradually moving away from the subsidy regime and moving into the enabling infrastructure, as you mentioned, probably the ancillaries you call them, to make renewables a success. That was another item on the agenda in all our dialogues, both in the energy dialogue and the strategic and commercial dialogue, where we are looking at modern technology coming in to help us strengthen the grid, upgrade the grid. We are looking at reconducting in a big way, particularly towards down south. We're very keen that the southern states, who are presently often starved of adequate power because of inadequate transmission lines, and I'm sure everybody in the room will appreciate, I can't create a magic wand on transmission lines. It does have its own time frame to implement. In fact, you'll be amazed, Vikram. In the initial periods when I became minister and I used to stress my department, why are we not bidding out transmission lines? It was brought to my notice that from the time a transmission line is planned to the time it is awarded, the bid is awarded, the time taken was 640 days, roughly 640 days. That was the system prevailing. And nobody had ever thought or applied their mind to it. We've been working on it for the last few months. I believe we are still at 300 odd days. And my target to my team is that it should be about 100 days. There are, of course, technological challenges, but I'm sure we can overcome that. But at least we are down to half. Another 50% reduction, I'm sure, will be possible. But ideally, I would like to see it at about 100 or 120 days. And I think the department has plans to aggressively bid out transmission lines rather than handing it over to PGCIL on nomination basis. So we are moving out of the system of nomination to nomination becoming an exception and competitive bidding becoming the norm. This year itself, there will be, in the next 6 months, at least 12 or 14 or $16 billion worth of lines being bid out. Hopefully in the next 5 years, we are looking at an investment of nearly $50 billion on transmission. I'm looking to create a national grid which is seamless, which can absorb large amounts of renewables, and which has the ability to make up for any shortages in particular areas with grid-connected additional power being transmitted, and whenever there is surplus to be able to move the power out to other areas. And I believe all of this will ultimately bring the power cost down. I'm sure those of you who follow the power prices on the exchange, I believe this year it should be less than 50% of what it was at same times last year. The whole summer months where power tariffs used to go up to 12 rupees on peak hour, this year I think did not exceed 6 rupees at any point of time. Is that right, sir? 6 at the max. And going forward, I hope to make this even more competitive and reduce this also. There were times, in fact, I was visiting the Power Grid Monitoring Center in Manesar, and they actually showed me on the computer screen at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the power price was zero. It's actually zero. Power was available at zero price. Now, I've had newspaper articles and I've had questions being asked of me in Parliament about the low plant load factor and the fact that this zero is disturbing. I personally believe it's very satisfying, because any economy in the world, and today the Reserve Bank Governor in fact alluded to this point while reducing interest rates, where he said that the capacity utilization of India as a whole is about 70% or 72%. So we have sufficient additional capacity to take care of increased demand with lower interest rates and make sure that the inflation pressure is kept down. If we have to industrialize, if we have to increase manufacturing, if you want to attract foreign investment, if you want to create new jobs, all of that will require power. And power is not something you create after the demand comes in. A good developing nation should always have sufficient power, additional capacity, so that demand keeps increasing and you are able to feed that demand. I don't think the reverse, which has been the traditional Indian way of working, is acceptable to us. We believe we have to have sufficient power, sufficient coal, sufficient transmission capacity, all in excess and not to plan for 5 years, but to plan for 30 years ahead. That's the way we are looking at our energy needs and our energy security also. So renewables has a dimension of energy security for this government. It's not just a question of comparable costs. Even though with the bidding haven't been quite successful, we find that the costs of renewables have also come down significantly. And going forward, I think they may come down even further. With the interest rate today, probably some more reduction may also be possible. But with economies of scale, just like in LEDs, we saw this 74% reduction, rather 76% reduction. I'm sure in solar, wind, other forms of renewable energy also will see a reduction. The cost of capital initially looks high, but my present visit has given me confidence that there's a lot of capital out there wanting to come into India, particularly for renewables. And you spoke about foreign exchange fluctuation. I have been at pains explaining to investors all over the world to actually study the Indian rupee. If you see the Indian rupee, we had a period up to 1980 where it was broadly pegged to the dollar. I think 7.5 rupees or somewhat thereabouts. So for a long period, we were like the Chinese story. We didn't allow it to devalue. And then the 80s saw a sharp devaluation because it was the cumulative effect of 30 years or whatever. But post 91, despite two big shocks, you had a 25% depreciation once and probably a 40% or 20% more a second time. We had two large devaluations of the rupee in the 90s, early 90s. Despite that, from 91 till today, on a 25-year period, the rupee has not depreciated more than 3.25% or 3.3%. Have a component of imports, but I can clearly see with Foxconn having announced interest to come into India and manufacture, many other international companies looking at India as a base, and the SoftBank owner, Masa-san, in his discussions with me had highlighted that nearly 1/3 of the cost of solar is logistics. And based on that, I'm quite convinced that with the economies of domestic manufacturing increasing in scale, I'm quite confident that maybe a year and a half, 2 years down the road, domestic manufacturing will become cheaper than imports. I'm fairly confident on that. Compliance of states, I'm in dialogue with the states to see how we can increase their compliance, but the DISCOM resolution, which is our highest priority, and you have all talked about it, is very much on the cards. I have been personally having extensive meetings with state chief ministers, particularly the states which have huge losses piled up. We've had a series of discussions at all levels on the DISCOM stress. The Reserve Bank governor also today spoke about it, and he also expressed somewhat satisfaction at the progress being made. And I'm very confident that in the days to come, you will see a significant amount of policy intervention to help the DISCOMs not only get out of the loss-making situation that they are doing today, but also a sustainable framework to ensure that, as you said, institutional framework to ensure that in the future there is no incentive to any government, state government, to allow their DISCOM to be in debt or in losses. We are working on that framework. Fortunately, the people of India are the final arbiter to the performance of the political establishment. And in some sense, my own understanding of the political results of elections of the last 5 years show me that those governments which have performed well, particularly in giving good roads, quality power at affordable prices, and the basic needs, literally going back to Bijli Sadak Pani, as was being talked about earlier, have been voted back to power, and those who failed to perform on this score have been booted out by the people. And there are many examples to demonstrate that. I won't get into those individual examples. So I see in all the states, whether run by parties which may be inimical to, which may not agree entirely with the ideology of the BJP or NDA, they also are very conscious that they will have to set their power sector right. So I'm quite confident this DISCOM issue will start showing signs of significant improvement in the days and weeks to come. And in a frame of probably the next 3 years, we should be able to get all the DISCOMs out of the red. It will be a gradual process. I cannot, again, claim to have a magic wand to do it overnight. But there's a $10 billion loss roughly on the DISCOMs cumulatively every year. I see 1/3 of that getting shed off every year in the next 3 years. And that will obviously then reflect on the demand for power. Coupled with our initiatives on bringing down the cost of coal, impacting the cost of power, bringing down the energy consumption through the LED program. In fact, just for information, the 770 million LED bulbs that we hope to provide and replace the incandescent and CFLs will be the world's largest program of this nature. There is no comparable story anywhere in the world, similar to our 175 gigs renewable. Both of these are being recognized the world over as path-breaking initiatives, as India's concern for climate change, and unprecedented in scale. In fact, if I may share with you, Vikram, the Philips CEO was sitting next to me at Davos, and I was highlighting to him my grand plans on energy efficiency, and I thought he would have been very pleased with those plans. But anyway, the lunch was over, we went our separate ways. He came and met me 3 or 4 weeks ago. And he said, I've only come to tell you I disbelieved every word you said on that lunch table. But today I've come to tell you I feel more convinced and I can see the commitment of India and I'm confident you will achieve it. And we are confident. These 770 bulbs in India will be changed in 3 years. And the impact, did I mention it? 20 gigs reduction in the peak load, 20 gigs. 60 million tons of carbon dioxide emission reduction every year. And what will be the saving in terms of electricity consumed? 10,000 crore units. 10,000 crore units. At an average cost of even 4 rupees, domestic lighting is generally cheaper. You're looking at 40,000 crore rupees saved in the people's pocket. That's the saving to the people of India. And some of it may also help the DISCOMs reduce their losses. So whatever part is unpaid for, there might be some power theft or some low-cost power given to people. The saving there helps the DISCOMs also. Possibly in states like Delhi more so, Mr. Prabir Sinha. This DISCOMs being stuck with PPAs, it's a double-edged sword. It may seem in the short run that you are stuck with a PPA, but maybe 2 years down the road, that may be your greatest strength, that you have a assured supply of power to meet your growing demand, to meet the growing demand of industry, business, growth in your states. And I'm happy that states today are competing with each other. Growth has become a mantra across the nation. We are seeing states fight with each other over ease of business. You're seeing that a state chief minister is saying that now I have to redouble my effort to improve my ease of doing business. And that is what will really change the face of India, this competitive federalism. So I'm not unduly worried about these PPAs. 1 or 2 states have been asking that they would like to surrender their PPAs. But that's because they were inefficiently made in the first place. Now that's something which I'm not responsible for. In our tenure, we've not encouraged any of these PPAs at phenomenal prices. We have encouraged only PPAs which are bid out at competitive prices. And all the bidding that has happened in this government's tenure have been at very, very competitive prices. This gap of 75 to 100 paisa that you mentioned is a national average. But actually it's only confined to 11 states, and in some states it's higher than that. In some states much lower, and many states are able to break even. But that break even could also be the result of not procuring enough power and supplying to the people. So we are hoping that with the resolution of the DISCOMs and their stress, coupled with the savings in the cost of power or the improved reduction in the cost of power, I do see in the days going forward power procurement picking up. And then it's a snowballing effect. So this government plans everything in a very holistic manner. My effort is, if the plant load factor goes up, then the fixed cost gets amortized over a larger base, and the power cost also comes down. So it's a conundrum that's only resolved as a whole web. It's when you connect the dots that the best solution is found. So it's not just locating the problem, but taking a holistic view of that problem to find a solution. So I'm trying to see if all the plants can work at 90% PLF. That itself will bring down the cost of power by 40 paisa nationally. So these are the efforts that we are trying to put in. And when we do the coal linkage and all, I think overall this gap, again, as I said, is a max 3-year phenomena, but will rapidly come down. Well, you said not talking enough about successes. I have mentioned 20 successes today, but I can assure you that none of the media will carry any of that. I'm just thinking, what is the controversial statement I might have made so far, which is going to be the media headline. Hydro is a very good idea to use as a peak load. I've been talking to some of the states who have hydro. Karnataka has it, Maharashtra, Kerala, somewhat in the hill states in Jammu Kashmir and Himachal. So it's a very good idea to use that as a peak load, particularly to balance the renewables. There is the stress of compensating the hydro producers and the mechanism to compensate them. So it's still a work in progress. It will take some time for us to be able to. I'll be delighted if Brookings and Rahul, you can help us in creating a framework which is a win-win for all, without stressing the state. So Koina in Maharashtra generates power at 50 paisa. Bhakra Nangal at probably even less than that, I'm told. In some cases 5 paisa or something, 25 paisa. So it'll have to be properly planned, and I'm happy to look at that more actively. I think by and large we have covered all the subjects that were raised. Pradeep Bhai talked about the causes. I have obviously gone into the causes. Without that, the solution could not have been found. So there are causes, but I'm not looking at a solution where the government bails out DISCOMs. The central government will have to stop bailing out DISCOMs, and that's very clearly the intention going forward. At best, the central government, through the schemes of Deen Dayal Upadhyay, Gram Jyoti Yojana and IPDS, will do focused intervention to upgrade the distribution infrastructure and bring down the AT&C losses. That will be the support the center will give, because I believe that's the sustainable way to bring down losses, cash losses, by reducing the AT&C losses. And in some of these loss-making states, it's ranging between 28 to 55%. So that clearly is a focus area in all our efforts to bring down losses. And I'm looking not at a very lazy trajectory to bring down these losses. We are looking at aggressive plans to bring it down in 3 years. And we are looking at a permanent resolution, not a band-aid solution to the DISCOMs. I do hope to receive support from the states. I'm in dialogue with the states, but I'm also very confident of receiving this support, because end of the day, every 5 years, each of these states also will have to go back to the people of India for their verdict on their performance. And I am confident that when I go back to the people of India in 2019 under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, we will have a good report card to show on the energy side, giving access to everybody in this country, giving access to the 200 million people who have been deprived 68 years after independence, ensuring I meet the target of reaching power to the 18,500 villages in the 1,000 days that have been set by Honorable Prime Minister from Red Fort on 15th August, ensuring that power is quality power, affordable power, 24/7 power, adequate power for the farmers particularly so that agrarian distress can be brought under control. All in all, a report card which will be people friendly and I am sure will receive the support of the people of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Normally, when we invite a minister, we always invite him, and then he gives the first keynote address, and then it sort of proceeds. Minister has given this address, he's left, and then we will have a panel discussion. What we did today, inadvertently perhaps, but maybe Rahul had thought of this, we had the discussion for 3 hours, and we actually gathered together all the views. We had a very rich discussion, and we then presented that to the minister. So he wasn't allowed to give a bhashan or anything. He basically got a whole set of questions that he had to answer. And he answered them brilliantly. I think there's no doubt about it that he actually went through each and every question or each and every issue that we raised, and he presented us with his point of view. I have to say, sir, that I've been in this business now for 30 years, and I've dealt with many of your predecessors, although I don't think there was any predecessor who held your portfolio as such, at least not when I was in this job. And I have seldom, firstly, found someone who has such a tremendous grasp of all the issues across the entire spectrum of energy, and who has such a commitment to delivery, to execution. So it's not just a statement of intent, it is actually a very focused statement of execution. And I think that everyone in this room, whether you're in the government or in the private sector or the public sector or think tankers or whatever, we are solidly behind you, and we would like to make sure that whatever we can do to help you execute this ambitious plan, and from everything you say, in your view, a realistic plan, and we will always come up with challenge. We will always present to you with our views, which may not actually necessarily align with yours, but we are here to make sure that, or not make sure, we are to help you, if you wish our help, execute this plan, sir. And I really am grateful on behalf of Brookings, on behalf of everyone in this room, to you for having taken the time off, and for having given us in Brookings such support as well. And we will continue to, as I say, look forward to this dialogue and interface with you and your colleagues in the ministry. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.